Hey guys, what's up? So I want to give you guys some tips on how not to confuse Spanish and Italian when you're learning these languages, because a common question asked is how difficult or how hard or how long does it take to learn two languages from the same language family, especially Romance languages. And for some people it can get very confusing and it can get easily mixed up in one's brain, and that's just common. So hopefully this video helps you differentiate these languages more when you're learning them. Thanks for watching, guys. So my first tip when it comes to learning Spanish and Italian is think of these languages as two separate languages. And this can help with really any languages you're learning. So if you're learning French and Spanish or Danish and Swedish, whatever it might be, you always want to think of them as two separate languages, because if you know in your brain that they're different, then it's just going to create less confusion in the future, and it's already going to help differentiate these languages in your mind. So one way to help you not confuse these languages is to looking for patterns. So when it comes to spelling, there are a lot of spelling patterns that reoccur through Spanish and Italian that may help you differentiate these languages more. So one of these is that in Spanish, when you have I-E next to each other in a word, in Italian they usually just drop the I, so you just have the E left. And of course this isn't always the case, but you can see this pattern reoccurring a lot. So one example is that for Spanish, the word for time or weather is tiempo. In Italian, you just have tempo. The word for November in Spanish is noviembre. In Italian, is just novembre. The word for winter in Spanish is invierno. In Italian, it's just inverno. The word for party or holiday in Spanish is fiesta, and you guys probably already know that one. In Italian, it's just festa. And the word for tooth in Spanish is diente. In Italian, it's just dente. And another spelling pattern that you can find when learning these is that words in Spanish that have U-E next to each other, in Italian they change to O. And of course this isn't always the case, but it may help you differentiate vocab words the more you learn. So for example, the word for body in Spanish is cuerpo. In Italian it's just corpo. The word for airport in Spanish is aeropuerto. In Italian it's just aeroporto. The word for bridge in Spanish is puente. And then in Italian, it's ponte. The word for door in Spanish is puerta. In Italian, it's just porta. And another pattern that you can see that is recurring, and this really helps me differentiate between these two languages when I was learning them at first, is that words in Spanish that end in AD, in Italian, they usually just end in A with an accent. So then, for an example, the word for freedom in Spanish is libertad. In Italian, it's just libertà. The word for age in Spanish is edad. In Italian, it's just età. The word for university in Spanish is universidad. In Italian, it's università. The word for diversity in Spanish is diversidad. In Italian, it's diversità. The word for city in Spanish is ciudad. In Italian, it's città. So hopefully these words help you, or these more patterns, more or less, help you differentiate Italian and Spanish as you learn them. And for my last tip, it's important to remember their differences rather than their similarities. So like I said in my first tip, to think of them as two separate languages, but this kind of just goes more in depth. So for words that are cognates in both Spanish and Italian, that can get super confusing. So by remembering their differences, it can be something like pronunciation. So maybe words that are spelled the same but are pronounced different in these languages. So for example, the word for sky in Spanish is cielo. In Italian, it's just cielo. And the word for dinner or meal in Spanish is cena, and then in Italian it's cena. And then the word for water in Spanish is agua, and then in Italian it's acqua. So these words are kind of spelled the same or almost spelled the same, and that can get super confusing. So that's why it's important to focus on their differences. That way, when you're trying to think of the right word to say and you have them both in your head and you can't figure out is that Spanish or is it Italian, maybe these things can help you. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching. Hopefully these tips helped you out a little bit, and if you have questions, feel free to comment below. If you like this video, if you want, give it a thumbs up. If you want to subscribe, if you like learning about Spanish, Italian, or America. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Adios.